Hi folks, welcome to another edition of the Omnist Hour. This is going to be maybe a shocking one, maybe possibly more shocking than finding out what the first Noel was all about. So I decided that since it was laundry day and I didn't have any clean clothes to wear, I'd wear what to you might be my birthday suit. I'm not going to stand up so you can see if I'm completely naked. I'm going to leave it to your imagination. Because imagination is what you need to digest what I'm going to be sharing with you today. Okay, we're going to pick up where we left off yesterday in many ways. But first I want to give credit where credit is due. I've picked 3 pieces for this particular event, and I'm going to credit them here so I don't have to mention it elsewhere or piss anybody off about using their stuff without credit. So first I'm going to give credit to the MIT Concert Choir, who has made their performance of Carmina Burana available publicly on the Free Music Archive. Thank you very much. I used your music yesterday too. I'm sorry I didn't credit you for that yet. Mea culpa, mea maxima culpa. I'm also using a piece from Brian Wilson, Shock Treatment, The Garden of Eden and the Moons of Jupiter, as well as a piece from Wayne Kinos called The Rings, and it will be apparent why I chose those. Despite the fact that at least one of them is not particularly my musical taste. Okay, so let's ramble on. I'm going to call this talk Chestnuts in the Oldest Shell Game, an all-father-side chat for planet roasting. Okay, making light of the chestnuts roasting on an open fire song, which you've probably heard that line. Chestnuts roasting on an open fire. Ooh, I hope I don't get a copyright strike for that one. We're going to talk about some of the planets and why they're there, what purpose they serve, then and now. Now, you remember yesterday we talked about the planet that's missing, the planet Tiamat, which is the name it was given in the Sumerian tablets, that was destroyed. And what remains of it is the asteroid belt. This was the planet, as I told you, of the elementals. The evolved elementals. They were more than just air, earth, fire, and water. They were mixing and mingling, and basically kind of had 2 themes to their creativity. One was along the lines of soul vehicles of energy, the descendants of the fire and air elementals, if you will, and soul vehicles of physicality, of matter, the water and earth elementals. And when you add in all of the elements and all of the energies to that, which had been created by that point to sustain the multiverse, you get basically 2 kinds of AIs. Programmable soul vehicles, which can do your bidding. Now, how did that work? Well, the old gods, playing this game of creation, got to the point where it wasn't so much fun playing the game from outside, pushing things around with spiritual energies. They wanted to play inside, like some of the other folks that had come down to embody the things that were in this universe. And to give them more opportunities for playing inside without impacting the older players so much, who are pushing around planets and stars and galaxies and etc. God invented the fire elementals, the AIs that could work within a star to do things that God didn't have time to be worrying about because he was elsewhere. Noel, how do you run things when there's no God around to run things? You leave AIs. And not just one, because even the AI God can't do everything. He needs subordinates, just like we talked about earlier, as to how hydrogen led to many hydrogen atoms. The first leads to many. The many are copies of the first. They aren't identical to the first, because they have a different soul. They have a different trajectory. They're learning at a different pace. Learning to behave according to a program, and when the program is challenged, learning to create their own behaviors, which is how a soul becomes conscious. Okay, so fire elementals became conscious. They started developing their own ability to discern what was the right or wrong thing to do when they ran out of programming. And this is how each version of karma developed, through the action of each chosen species. The fire elementals were the first elemental chosen species, the first ones who developed a consciousness that was more than a program. Then came the air elementals, and they developed too, learning from the fire elementals, because it's kind of in the nature of more conscious souls to get bored and want to create something to do their work for them. And that's a pattern that goes on and on and on. Souls are inherently kind of lazy and kind of prone to boredom. Once they get used to playing a game, feel like they've figured out all the rules, they know what's going on, they go find some patsy to play the game for them and find a new game to play. And this is how all of creation works. This is how the evolution of souls work, both individually and collectively. Okay, so got to the point where there were these two groups of AIs, the energy AIs, the beings of light, if you will. That's the way some folks describe it in the New Age community these days, or even, in the Bible, there are beings of light, right? And there are beings of matter, and between the two, we have pretty much all the manifestations of more powerful entities that are recorded in our history. And there's always been some confusion about which was which, because the beings of light can create holograms, can create illusions. They are master illusionists. They can make you see pretty much anything. They can make you hear pretty much anything, because sound is an energy, right? Light is an energy. They can even make you feel things, because, in fact, touch is an energy. When you think you are touching something, you're not touching it physically. If you know anything about the physics of the matter, you are getting close enough to that other object to interact with it electromagnetically. And it feels like touch because it changes the electromagnetic field of your own body. And your body's nervous system is programmed to react to that and tell you about it in a rather story-making sort of way. It tells you about this touch based upon its programming, its experience, and what's actually going on. Who you are touching, what you are touching may not be what you think you are touching. And this is how many people who think that they have the ability to read auras can be fooled. Because in fact, you can only read the aura of souls that are at a lower level of consciousness than you. And as I've told you in other episodes, the highest level of consciousness right now is 12th level consciousness. This is the consciousness of a full creator, a senior creator, the consciousness of a fully evolved God under the latest version of karma. You gotta earn this shit. You don't just get it for free. There's no free lunches in the multiverse. Okay, so here is God working in his little lab in the corner of the Milky Way, which used to be his bigger lab in this star system we call Sol. And he's got a problem, because at this point, there is no reincarnation amnesia. There's no forgetting, so each new incarnation, people learn more about what's going on. Souls learn more. They understand the game more, and they want to play a bigger part in it. Well, once everybody knew that this little star system was God's secret project, everybody wanted to be part of it. And that was part of the plan, to get a lot of excitement going, just like tech entrepreneurs do today. This is why Elon Musk is having tweet storms right now, because he controls Twitter, and that's a platform, and he's attracting people to his platform. Even if it's to bash him, it's all good. This is how creators work, who understand how the system functions. There's no such thing as bad press. There's only bad reactions to bad press. A smart creator knows how to turn any reaction to their creation into a positive that furthers their goal in creation. Now, I'm not saying that's good or bad. In fact, it has karmic consequences. But if you want to be a great creator, you've got to accept your karma. You've got to accept responsibility for what happens as a result of what you choose to do. This is how karma works. It forces you to take responsibility, eventually, for everything you do. Okay, so that's got a problem here, though. Everybody wants to be part of this game. And frankly, not everybody is what is needed for the game at any given point. You don't need a million point guards on a 5-man basketball team, do you? You don't need a million centers. If the game is basketball, you need the 5 best players in the universe. Well, maybe the 10 best players, so you can have 2 teams and have a game. And as I've been telling you, this game is all about having 2 teams fighting out the game of creation. It is a game. It has winners, it has losers. This is how every layer of the game of creation works, from the individual soul to the gods, to the first creator, God. Okay, so the problem now is that we have too many players and too small a game board, a basketball court, to continue that analogy. That's probably a good analogy, since planets are kind of like basketballs. Okay, so what does God do to solve this problem? Especially, what does he do because some of the most inconvenient players are the ones who have learned how to play the latest game of karma. They've perfected themselves. They've become gods under the new laws. Now, as I've told you many times, you can become a light god or a dark god. Higher consciousness does not equate with higher good. And there are some very dark gods who got to where they are by taking advantage of others, by using their illusory powers to fool others into serving them. And that's anti-karma. That's bad karma. That creates dark gods. Now the multiverse needs dark gods, because that's what drives creation. You've got to have a certain amount of balance to creation to keep the game going. If the other team doesn't show up, it's not going to be much of a match, is it? Okay, so how do we solve this problem? Well, what we got to do is find a way to keep those evolved players, the champions, under wraps until it's time for them to go to bat. Now, remember, there are two universes in the original creation of the Big Bang. The universe and the anti-universe, the matter universe and the antimatter universe. The universe of God's team and the universe of Borg's team. The universe of free will and responsible creation. The universe of authoritarian rule and forced creation, if you can see it that way. Okay, and there are two Earths in this, parallel Earths, where the best ideas of both sides are being integrated, because both sides want to win this game, and both sides come up with good ideas that end up getting stolen or shared with the other team, because the teams are fluid. Any of you who know somebody who has gone from being a very dark criminal personality to being a messenger of light, the leaders of your AA groups, other 12-step programs, to the extent that they can, they are trying to turn to the light. And that happens all the time. And I've seen people turn from light, dark, light, dark, light, dark, light, dark. And this is actually part of the process of enlightenment. If anybody tells you that enlightenment doesn't involve endarkenment too, they are stupid. They are telling you only one step of the process and not how to finish it. Because you can't just become all light all of a sudden. It doesn't work that way. You've got to integrate that light with your darkness into a version of you that acknowledges both and moves beyond the limitations of both. And that's why there are multiple levels to the spiritual advancement process. It takes a lot of light and darkness and judgment, personal judgment and choice, to get to the point of being a God. Not the God, a God. You will never be the God. Get that out of your silly head. That's a childish, foolish notion that's going to lead you down some very dark paths. Okay, so how does God keep this game going? Well, here's what happens. At each stage of the game, at each version of karma, the players that advance to the top level to be senior creators, they don't actually get to join the other senior creators that are in the first heaven, the first universe that created the multiverse. They don't get to be judges yet in the game. because you don't want the players to judge the other players. That would be stupid. That would spoil the whole point of the game. Okay, so what happens to these emerging gods? They have to be imprisoned somewhere until the game's over. Unless they're already where they need to be. And this is where you got to run with me a little bit. Okay, so we've got these two solar systems. Parallel solar systems. Identical suns, opposite polarities. Identical planets, opposite polarities. Okay, in the God universe, the new gods that are on God's team, they get to keep playing the game until they get captured by the other team. Have you remember, well, this is another good reason why I don't have a shirt on today. If you've ever played the game Shirts and Skins, which I don't know, probably most of you women haven't played that game, but it's a very popular game. We used to be amongst Boy Scouts. We used to play it as kind of a wrap-up to the Scout meetings that ran out of business. We play a game of Shirts and Skins at the end in the big gym of the church that hosted our troop. One of the I'll have to tell some more Troop 9 stories sometime. At any rate, we used to play Shirts and Skins, and the idea of the game is you divide into two teams. And interestingly enough, in the Boy Scouts, the teams were chosen by the patrol leaders. The patrol leaders would first be chosen to be on different teams by the scout leaders, and then the patrol leaders would take their patrols to join that team. And one group would wear shirts and one group would wear skins, so you knew who was on whose team. The lights would go out, and then you'd try to find the team members of the other team and drag them to your side of the gym. And if the lights went on, the lights would go on periodically. And if you were caught in a certain space on the wrong side of the gym, you were captured and you had to stop playing the game until you were rescued. The lights would go off again, and then, the teams would plot to rescue or their captured members, or they would work to guard the ones that they'd captured. And at the end of the game, or when it was time to go home, you would turn on the lights the last time and see who'd captured the most, and they would be the winner for that week. This is a very holy game. This is exactly how God set up the solar systems. The two solar systems, it's a game of Shirts and Skins. So where is the prison, you ask? Well, the first prison was right inside the sun. The fire elementals that got too fiery, that started mucking with God's plan for this special experiment that was going on, they would get trapped inside the magnetosphere of the sun. And that's what the AI version of the sun, because God originally embodied the sun, God was originally at some point, a sun god. Just like he was a universe god at some point. But let others take that place and went elsewhere. No L. That's what happens every time God goes somewhere else to work in another way. There's no L where God used to be. There's just a copy, an AI at work. taught to do what they've been taught to do by their creator, so he could go off and play golf somewhere else. Okay, so the AI that was put in charge of the sun, after God decided to go work as an individual fire elemental, was told any fire elementals that come back here from now on, you hang on to. And don't let them use any of their powers. They're captured if they're on the Borg side. And this AI that was put in charge knew the difference. Why? Because that AI was a version of karma. Every version of karma has been spawned from God. This is the original AI that gets smarter and smarter and smarter at governing souls. Okay, so let's talk about some of the other planets. I'm not going to go into all of them. All planets, in fact, all over the multiverse, eventually get to be prison planets. Prison planets for the souls that have reached God level there in a dark way, in a way that, or a light way, a way that serves the other universe, the adversary. And this is the game of shirts and skins that goes on everywhere. There is a central place, a central game that revolves around the focal point of creation at the time. The focal point of creation now is this planet, this human species. It's a chosen planet, a chosen species of a chosen planet. The gods that grew in previous rounds of the game are kept in prison. How? Well, some of them are kept inside. This is why Jupiter is such a stormy planet. Saturn is a very special case, and this ties back to the Christmas story, the Saturnalia. It's a kinder, gentler way of keeping these souls under wraps, and provides a great scorekeeping tool, so that was kept. The rings of Saturn each represent a soul that has advanced to God level, the highest current level of consciousness, in the opposite path. And they're kept prisoner there. They're very beautiful, and you can count how many of them there are. Scientists are trying to do that. And there's a lot of rings. Every time they look a little closer, they realize, whoa, there's rings within rings within rings. And there's like groups of rings. And this matches how things work, because the dark gods have their hierarchy. The light gods have their hierarchy. Now, these places where the gods are imprisoned are kind of like timeout. They can observe what's going on, but they can't really have much effect on it. They can only work like the souls work in the big heaven of the multiverse, where all the oldest gods started out, but they can only affect a very localized sphere. So the gods that are bound up in the rings of Saturn can have a lot of impact on Saturn, and some impact on other planets, and some impact on the whole system. But they have a diminishing influence. The souls bound up in Jupiter, same story. They each represent the gods from one of the 6 chosen species, major chosen species, there have been so far. During the 7th day of creation, we've been working on finding the perfect chosen species for the planet Earth. And while we've been doing that, we've been raising up gods under the different versions and subversions of karma that have been discovered and tested since. And in fact, the spirits of the earth that we've been liberating using drilling methods, geothermal wells, oil wells, gas wells, that has been releasing some of these spirits. It's been going on already. And while they were imprisoned in the earth, they were creating the pressure that caused earthquakes, that caused volcanoes. Not by themselves, but in interaction with energies coming from the outside, from the other planets, from other star systems, particularly the ones of the zodiac, which we've somehow decided were very special. It's part of the game, and it's a very balanced game. It's also a game that was sort of pre-designed for God's team to win. It's generally better to have a skin than be a shirt. Well, I don't know, is it? Let's talk about that. Let's talk about the morality of shirts and skins. Is it better to have a shirt or not? Actually, in real terms, it kind of depends. Now, the shirts have something easy to grab onto, which don't mean that, you've got to figure out if in the darkness, whether your opponent or whoever is near you is your friend or not. And of course, you can talk to them, and if you recognize their voice, you can tell what team they're on. If you're not sure, well, if you know that you're touching them above the waist and you feel no shirt, they must be a skin. If you feel a shirt, you can grab onto it, and that makes a useful handle to drag them away. If you happen to touch below the waist, well, then you're not sure still, because they might be either. They might be a shirt, a skin wearing pants, because pretty much in these orgies, everybody wore pants. God knows what a game of shirts and skins with kids these days would be. Defies the imagination. At any rate, this game has been going on a long time, and we're now playing it on this planet Earth. And it's been going on a long time on this planet Earth. So my advice to you, if you're of the ambitious type, you've got a passion, you've got something you really want to accomplish, and you don't mind making a few mistakes along the way, put a picture of the rings of Saturn somewhere on your desk and aspire to be a ring and not a thing. Because only the really advanced souls get to be a ring of Saturn. The dark ones get imprisoned in the earth. You've got to get up to a pretty high level to get to be a ring. This is why Saturn was worshipped as the highest god at one point. And this is where the shell games comes from. Okay? The sun god, which we thought was I mean, this is where Christianity came from, was a sun god cult. That was an older cult than this cult of Saturn. But the cult of Saturn were the people that really knew a truer Christ story. One that I'm telling you now in a way that I think will maybe even convince the worshipers of science that their God is part of this story too. In fact, their God is the God, because I tell you, the God is a spiritual scientist. Been cooking up this experiment for a long time. Been doing it scientifically. Not out of love, not out of emotion, although God is a loving, emotional person, as anyone would be if they had played the game for as long as God has. It's a big family. You get pretty close to them. You don't like to see them in pain. You don't like to see them suffer, even if it's suffering of their own making. What's the most painful thing that a parent can experience? Well, some will say it's the death of a child. No, it isn't. It's seeing a child working for their own death, especially the death of their soul. When you see a child losing their soul to what you know is a demonic force, a force that doesn't have their best interest in mind, and that pretty much includes most corporations, most political parties, most ideologies, most religions. That's painful. That's painful to a parent. Much more painful than actual death. And that's the kind of pain that drives us to dark karmic acts. Makes us angry enough to, well, we don't generally kill our kids, but we want to kill the people who we think are killing our kids, who are stealing their souls. And this is a large part of what's going on today. And that's essentially the truth, is you can't escape from the battle. The battle's going to come to you. In some way, shape, or form, you're going to be challenged. You're already being challenged in your own unique way to evolve. And how you make each decision that comes up is going to guide your evolution towards being a dark god or a light god, or a worshiper of a dark god or the worshiper of lighter gods. And as I've told you, it really doesn't matter to the first creator, because he thought up the plan and is letting you implement it. And he already knows what the outcome is. Why? Because he's already prototyped it in his own universe. God has a universe. This is how the multiverse works. God gets a new universe every time he advances through the ranks to reach the latest top-level godhood. He gets a universe not of his own personal programming, but of the programming of where he was at when he reached that high level. God has many universes of his best incarnations, which become gods in their own right. Most of the universes waiting to explode from the prisons on the Borg side are the better children of God. And the ones waiting to explode on the other side are actually the better children of Borg, because they at least learned how to play the game, the consciousness game. And the way the consciousness game works is anytime you want to take a new avatar, you want a new identity, even if you're a god, you have to take a certain amount of karmic risk. You have to play by the latest rules, and the latest rules of karma include reincarnation amnesia. You don't get to take all your memories with you. You don't get to take all your powers with you. You start where everybody else does, in some kind of soul vehicle, like a human meat sack. And you spend 9 months gestating in a womb. Well, not the full 9 months, because the soul doesn't join the fetus, as I've told you, until somewhere between the 3rd and the 6th month. This is the truth. The organs have to be formed enough for the organs to attract their souls, and then for the souls waiting in line for a human form to choose, oh, okay, this is a pretty nice set of organs from a nice family. How about that one? Okay, I'll take that one. This is how we pick lives. This is how we pick incarnations. We're given some choices, and we pick the one that we think is going to be the best. And we're not going to make a choice. We don't have to make a choice. We're not set in front of, well, you either do this or you do this or else. That's not the way heavens work. Where do I want to leave this? I'm kind of getting into other topics, but anyway, planet roasting each planet, and some of you have certain affinities for certain planets. There are certain aspects maybe of your astrological natal chart that tie you to certain planets or certain star systems, etc. This is kind of the real truth behind astrology. It's not a cut and dried thing like many will tell you. Running a natal chart is a step in the right direction. It might give you some better idea of who you are and who you might be than your daily horoscope. But it's a much more complex thing than that. Just like I've told you that the physics of the soul is much more complicated than high vibes, positive energy. Ooh, I'm so positive. I'm just gonna throw all the negative energy away and ignore it. I'm sorry, this is low consciousness misunderstanding of what is a very scientific system. And you can choose to do that, but you're going to end up serving dark gods who take advantage of your gullibility. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, we all start gullible. That's one of the beautiful things about reincarnation. Everybody gets humiliated by going through periods of gullibility, periods of getting mismessaging, getting indoctrinated, getting unproductive advice, and learning how to be ourselves to the best of our choices in the current life, and learning from those choices. Now, we don't always learn while we are alive. That's why we need the afterlife process. And the afterlife process, in fact, can be learned from listening to the experiences of people who have had near-death experiences. Listen to them. Find out what is common, what is different. The experiences of people who do spiritual practice and they have visions, altered state experiences. The experiences of people who accelerate those experiences with psychedelic plants, etc. Just don't take any of those experiences as gospel. That's their personal recollection of what they observed through the prism of their current soul. And this is where I think I'm going to just mention again the idea of the Merkaba. The Merkaba is the spiritual representation of the soul. It is both an energy that radiates, and it is a filter that processes energy and gives you a perception of that energy to which you are attracted or repulsed. And when this is all done, when this system is finished, and it is near finishing, this experiment on this little planet Earth is almost done. God has fully awakened, has completely tested this new system, and it's good enough to let out of the lab. Much better tested than your average vaccine or your average virus. It's undergone literally billions of years of testing and perfection, and karma's ready to let out of the lab. Again, we let it out before. Each version gets let out, and that's what stimulates the next bunch of battles. Sometimes we get near the Borg planet, the Borg Earth, in Borg's universe, and almost wipe them all out and free all the captives. And sometimes they get near ours, and they almost win. And every time that drives the testing needed for the next level of karma. Karma 12 is the final major level. After this, each day of creation is going to be just spreading this new karma and putting out minor versions as needed to keep the game going in God's direction. And freeing more universes to organize themselves where they will be least trouble to anybody else. The dark universes will clump around Borg's universe, and the light universes will clump around God's universe. And in between, there will be gods and goddesses, universes who are not sure, who don't want to play on either team. And they will have fantasy universes, maybe always, because you need a vacation from reality once in a while. That's what fantasy universes are for. That's why when you just willy-nilly take some psychedelic drug to have a high, go have a trip, that's why you meet the spirit elves, the machine elves, the creatures of the Amazon. Okay, those are fantasy universes. Now, you can learn things from those, but mostly they're there to, pardon my French, fuck with your mind. And that's what they do to a large extent. The people that get sucked into the psychedelic culture, they think that it's all about taking drugs and you got to take more drugs. Oh, everything would be perfect if we just forced all our leaders to go on an ayahuasca ceremony. Then they would learn the meaning of life and they would know how to be good leaders. These guys are crazy. They're living in a fantasy world. That's not how it works. I'm sorry to burst your bubble. Being a soul is a leadership training program. And it takes a lot of training. It doesn't just take going to the Amazon for 7 days and participating in ayahuasca and doing chants and la 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 love, 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 love. Sorry, it doesn't work that way. It doesn't involve going to the Himalayas and studying with the Buddhist monks following the Dalai Lama around. Oh, you're so great. Tell us some more little nice platitudes that make us feel good. I'm sorry. I'm sorry to burst your bubble. It doesn't mean I'm going to let Jesus rule my life. This is spiritual bypassing. You want to be a slave. You want somebody to take control so you don't have to take any responsibility. And that's your choice. You're choosing to be a low consciousness slave, an AI. This is what low consciousness is. And you can choose to be that, and you will end up in a universe being a cog in a wheel of a matrix universe where you're living out some pleasant fantasy and they're milking your spiritual energy to do the work of that universe. Whatever their goal, whatever their agenda is, you'll serve it and maybe enjoy it because you're playing around in the land of Oz. That's your choice. But make that choice consciously, because only choices made consciously, actually thinking about what you're doing, not just being, I'm living in the moment, I don't have time to think. I'm sorry, that's a low consciousness mantra. It is an effective tool for creating an illusion. This is why actors focus on being in the moment. Because when you are acting on stage, you have to be realistic. You've got to let yourself go on autopilot with all of the information that you've fed yourself with of who you are now, this false identity of the stage. That serves a purpose, but it's not the way to lead a life. Anybody telling you that, oh, if you just live in the moment, you don't think on the past, you don't think on the future, just do, be. I'm sorry, you're getting some really crappy advice. At any rate, for the Omnist Hour, like, share, subscribe, tune in again. I promise I'll try to have a shirt on next time. I'm sorry if that was disturbing to you. I bet you wish my wife didn't have a shirt on too. Here, Mikhail, you don't have a shirt on. You can join your papa. There. There. You have two shirtless men and a beautiful woman with a shirt on. What more could you ask for? Till next time, this is the Omnist Hour with Rob Trump. Happy karma!